Good morning, everyone. Good day, good evening. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that are that you are here. So, right out the gate, I don't have the webcam on today. I have this really cozy fire to show you. And, it's good to change it up every now and again. But I just have this, condition going on. I have this cold sore right now, and I'm not exactly embarrassed or ashamed of it, but what I have noticed is that when you have a 1080p high definition webcam and you have a ring light, things like that can be a real distraction for people. So I thought, why not just show you this cozy fire as we do today's Starseed Ministry broadcast. And I am here. I swear that I am here, obviously, because you're hearing me while I'm doing this live. But if you're like me, and I would imagine many people are in this position, most likely you're listening to this while you're doing something else anyway. Of course, when we get to the part with the cards and we look at the chart, I mean, there's plenty to look at visually at that point, but I would imagine that most people are, multitasking, as many of us really do these days, in terms of being up to date with the content that we really like, and then just being active in other parts of our day. And strangely enough, that type of theme is actually very relevant to what we're going to be talking about in terms of the astrology this week. So I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the Starseed Ministry. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you very much. Happy New Year. The calendar says we're in 2023, whatever that means at this point. Oops. And let's bring this back here. And we're gonna talk. It's so interesting not to have the webcam up and to have a reflection of myself back. It's a little disarming, and I didn't expect it actually to be kind of a distraction for me. So I guess the distraction goes either way. So today's Starseed Ministry, we are going to really just talk about the reason I brought up this fire is because there actually is quite a bit of fire energy that is coming into our experience right now, and a lot of passion. The Cancerian energy, as we're going to see in the reading, is still really, really present. We do have a Cancer full moon coming on the 6th, which is Friday of this week. And as we get into all of the minutia of this transmission, right? We look at the reading, we kind of take stock of where we've been and how we've been feeling, especially in the last week. We'll talk about where we are in terms of the moon phases. That's something that we've been going over in the Catalyst classroom, is the lunar phases, how they are partitioned, what each phase really represents in terms of the growth process of the individual. But there is a lot of this type of fire energy right now that is available to us, and really reinforcing, kind of coming in at the root of things. And I have a feeling, and I suspect, just with my own experiences and reading the chart and getting the transmission for today, that yes, there may seem to be things that are a defeat, or perhaps we've been going through a very difficult time where we've been really questioning some things, or feeling like that we're not really measuring up to where we want to be. There may actually be things that have come to fruition that have not added up to what we need them to be. But what I will say here is that there is a lot of blessing and almost miracle-like energy that is coming into our experience right now, that is giving us kind of I want to say boost, or giving us a charge in some ways to remember where our power really comes from, and what kind of space we are creating to let the flame of divinity, of our spiritual transformation and creativity, to enter into our experience. And so one of the things, if you caught the post I put up on social media yesterday, is, are we going to start acting from a place of intention of creating these space, moving these obstacles out of the way, maybe coming into alignment with cycles that are on their way out and recognizing that contribution? Or are we going to continue to be triggered by stuff that happens to us and then consistently responding or reacting to that? And that's a question we all have to come to really on our own. And yesterday there was this incredible set of transits that I'll show you when we look at the chart, that one of which is a square with the sun in Capricorn to Chiron that is now direct in Aries. And so it really brought that sense of, where is our character really being developed? Are we creating a space in which the divine flame is able to enter and really work miracles in our lives? Or are we continuing to act out of wounded ego-ness? And that's not a negative connotation when it comes to ego. I really want to make that clear. But the ego is the seed, right? The personality that is imbued with the spark of divinity or God or source, the Great Spirit, is the ego, or the inner child that has the potency and the desire to just be at the most base instinctual level. But even that seed has to fall away in order for the full potential of that individual or personality to come forward, or that seed. And that is a process that is going to be brought to culmination, I think, with this full moon in Cancer, as all full moons really do. They come to a point of culmination and fulfillment of the intentions that were really put into place with the new moon, which was also correspondent to not only Chiron going direct, but also the solstice. So many people are celebrating the calendar new year, but people who are savvy to the natural cycles and to, which is, the basis of astrology, that we have turned a corner, and we are kind of making the transition into the corresponding side of the wave function here, in terms of access to light and to information and to the energy of our own sustainment, right? That is what the solar energy represents. But there has to be a space in order for this to work. And what happens when we can't let go of the ego as the primary and only force that is implementing any type of creative purpose in our lives? When that isn't let go, that leads to all kinds of problems, specifically issues when the natural process of disintegration comes about and there's too much personal attachment to what has been fulfilled, and then will run its course and find its way back to source, right? So it's where our power comes from is truly the fourth house, the Cancer energy, right? The nadir of the chart, and where our unconditional devotion to that process really blossoms, which is Leo and the fifth house, and truly the territory of the sun. So there's a reminder right now about these particular energies, because there's so few bodies, celestial bodies, or objects that are in these territories astrologically or in the zodiac right now, other than the moon coming into Cancer. Black Moon Lilith is in Cancer and will move into Leo. And Pallas Athena, right, the goddess of wisdom, is retrograde in Cancer. And so Venus has moved into Aquarius today. And Saturn is still in Aquarius. This is the trend. We're going to be moving into Aquarius season, which is the opposite of Leo, which is where the sun is at its detriment. And so as we are preparing to make this transition on a seasonal level, on a much larger cycle level, because of Pluto moving into Aquarius within this time period leading up to the spring, the fact that Saturn has been here for a while now and has been laying essentially the physical material groundwork for this territory, which is the social organism as a whole, which is civilization at its most ideal, which is the resonance of the collective consciousness, something that can only that is in itself the container for the divinity within all of us. So the fact that we're going to be moving into this stage within the weeks, this time period right now is an opportunity to, I think, be sensitive to and very sensitive to, as we're going to get into the reading, be very sensitive to where our power comes from. Creating a space in order for the divine essence to come into, right? And it's the root system. You bloom where you're planted, and becoming aware of the necessity for the covering of the seed, which in a lot of ways is our ego. And it's not that is a negative thing. Like I said, it is meant to be given over to a process that is about relationship, right? And so when we get to the full moon, that is corresponding to that 7th house cusp, or that time of the year of the harvest, right? That 180-degree point is the opposing point to the new moon, which represents that 1st and 7th house. So when we look at the chart, it'll make more sense. And of course, for those of you who are Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising people, your full moon forecast is going to be out this week. The weekly astrology report for the Starseed Fellowship Plus people that's going to be out this week, and we'll look a lot deeper into all of these things. But what appears to be an external defeat is something that allows for us to reallocate resources back into the very places where growth starts to happen, which is Cancer and the 4th house. And so without the sacrifice of the seed, and I'm not saying that you lose all sense of who you are, but it's just like Chiron, all of the elements that allowed Chiron to be a master at healing, a master of divination, a master of astrology, and was able to really be of service to all of those who need it or needed it. Those elements were what ultimately were the root of Chiron's own suffering, and he had to release those things in order for him to actually release himself from his own suffering. And so I find that we kind of get caught back into the feedback loop of reaction, problem, reaction, solution, which is not in itself a bad thing. But when we are not able to give over, the shell of our own seed, right? When we can't let go of the callus around our being because we can't really acknowledge that anyone else exists out there, or that we are embedded in a physical reality. This is where, like I said, we get caught in the feedback loop of being triggered into our reactions, as opposed to following the pathway of the moon's cycle in relation to the sun, and start to approach those obstacles before they become problems for us. And it goes all back to where are you rooted, and what is the blossoming of your passion. And I think there's a lot still that we have to let go of personally. There's a lot that we have to not only let go of, but we have to start taking initiative to do those things. And I do feel with the full moon that where it shines from is a huge release from a repressive type of social construct that has kept us from tapping back into our natural wisdom and the law of nature. And when we can be released from those our own inhibitions that put all these layers onto who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to express ourselves, we also realize that that allows for something to start germinating. And there's something very beautiful that is wanting to come forward, but that space has to be created. And of course, the more that you get caught up in the outer narratives, or getting caught up in fear or paranoia or just la la land, I suppose, then, and specifically, the more you get caught up in your triggers that put you into victim mode, the less you're going to be actually able to fully engage this process with the full moon. And that might show you what relationships really they can't go any further. And perhaps that'll be the relationship to your ego. Perhaps the way that you have been conceptualizing it and acting is not going to be able to continue. And if you try to hold on to it, the disintegration process from the full moon all the way to the end of the lunar cycle will create a lot of existential crisis for the individual until they finally, release, by hook or by crook, it'll release, So, and what are you holding on to? Is it worth the amount of energy that is expended in order to hold on to it? Maybe it needs to just go. And when we can't imagine ourselves without that structure, this is where we hold on and just want to conquer that instead of being in alignment with that. So, we talked about it. There were a lot of Pleiadian vibes coming into this week, and that certainly did not disappoint in terms of what that signature really represents. So we'll talk more about that with the Starseed Fellowship weekly astrology forecast. But in the meantime, let's start looking at some space weather. Actually, I'm going to look at the chat here and see how people are doing. Loving the fire. Thanks, Megan. I love it too. Alex K says, good morning. Listening from bed. New Year's Eve messed up my circadian rhythm. Yeah, I totally just went to bed at my normal time. I just didn't care. I cared. We've been enjoying this holiday season immensely, but I just couldn't really get into staying up till midnight when I'm getting up at 4:30. So I'm glad you're listening from bed, though, and that you are taking some time for yourself. Happy Tuesday, Phoenix Rules. Re-injured my left shoulder again yesterday, having to rest by work on organizing my astrology papers instead of starting a quilt. Well, maybe that is what needs to be done today. And what's interesting about that is that the moon is in Gemini. So I'm not surprised that there is this more of this organizing of mental types of things or stuff that we may focus on mentally or in terms of information, right? Organizing information, organizing paperwork. With the moon in Gemini makes a lot of sense. That's very interesting. And I'm sorry that you re-injured your left shoulder. Gosh, that sucks. Especially if it was on the mend and healing and then something happened that... that sucks. I am not a fan of those things happen. I don't know who would be, but... at least your perspective about how to reorganize your energy and your focus is really much more in the realm of where we at with the waxing gibbous, right? Actually taking initiative to remove obstacles and make the best of your situation. So that's a pretty cool example, actually. But I'm still bummed that you hurt yourself or that you re-injured. So. All right, let's take a look here. I want to show you some things. First, we're going to exit out of this. As much as I love this fire, we're going to exit out of it. So one of the things that I noticed, I tend to look for the things that aren't there when I'm noticing things. And one of the things that I noticed is that the Schumann has now been blacked out since yesterday. So the last piece of data was Monday morning, late morning, roughly. That's our last piece of data from the Schumann. So it had been exceptionally quiet for many, many days now. And you'll see that that's not necessarily entirely correspondent to the geomagnetic unrest. That has been fairly elevated up until very recently. So for people who've had a hard time sleeping, last night was the first restful sleep I feel like I've had, and that's because I saw how the geomagnetic unrest started to bottom out and settle back down. There was a little bit on the first, there was a little bit of elevation, but it's been fairly quiet, and then there was a blackout. Now, why I think that's particularly interesting is that I'm going to show you something really pretty remarkable here. So this is this morning, late last night or this morning. This is the coronagraph, Soho coronagraph, and it shows basically in real time the flaring and stuff. So look to the left. Ooh, look at that. Let's see if I can try it again. So this is this morning. Bam! That was a huge, huge flare. Massive. Now, it was not faced towards us at all, so that's something to consider. And it hasn't updated in terms of the class or the strength, but it was it had a very wide, I mean, you can see it here. It had a pretty wide, trajectory out there, and it's pretty substantial. It just wasn't facing towards us. Wow, look at that. That is just remarkable. So one of the things that I noticed is that happened, and then right before that, there's no Schumann resonance data at all. Like, it's blacked out from the source, and there hasn't been, I'm waiting for it to come back online, and it hasn't come back online. So is it going to be one of those things where it's blacked out for 10 days? I have no idea. So we have these coronal holes that are facing us and about to go out of view. So we're supposed to get the solar wind from these in just a matter of a day or so. We're probably already getting it, but I think we got most of it already. I'm not sure, because things are really calming down right now, except for that huge solar flare. And let me show you the, I'm going to show you, here's the KP index. So you can see over the last couple of days, it's been fairly elevated. And now by yesterday and into today, it's really starting to calm down. So the geomagnetic unrest, the auroras, things like that, they're really settling for the moment, which seems kind of interesting considering that these solar winds should be coming at us. So I don't know what that's all about. But I'm grateful, to be perfectly honest, because that's the first decent night of sleep I've had in like a week. So, and we saw the solar flare. Now, this is just remarkable. Let me move this back to our window. Wow. So this is just in the last 2.5 days, and this just updated as of this morning. This looks like it's brand new, this Balleny Islands, which it looks like it's down here by Antarctica. This is really, really active, especially around the west coast of the United States. There is most likely, from what I've heard, and just based on looking at this, I mean, look at this. These are huge, and USGS, they love to downgrade stuff. I've seen it in real time happen where it's initially marked as something way higher, and then I go back and they've downgraded it. These are big, 5.1, 5.4. This one just happened, 5.6. There was magnitude 5 something in California just yesterday. So, and look, we're sharing latitude roughly right here with this whole subduction zone. It doesn't make me feel entirely confident about going to this part of the country within the next week, but it is what it is. And I don't feel anxious or afraid. I'm just really got my eyes on what's happening. But this is a lot of activity. There was just a fairly sizable shake over in Hawaii this morning as well. And it's really active at this latitude around the Ring of Fire especially, and just all on this side of the Pacific as well. So, I plan on, for those of you who are familiar with Dutch, and shout out to those who have drawn my attention to his channel. He's made a pretty big significant, he's made a prediction about a pretty significant earthquake in, this area. So I'm looking forward to watching his video. But for those of you who don't know Dutch or are not really up to speed with the space weather, and I posted something from him on the community page or the community tab on YouTube from Dutch, and they took it away. So, I mean, this is just a person that follows the seismic activity and makes predictions based on his experience, his knowledge, and his training, and he's considered misinformation and gets really erased from things and taken down. It happens with other channels that I look at too. So if you really are still like, that doesn't happen, I would encourage you to consider that something as seemingly benign as people who are studying seismic activity and solar weather being labeled as harmful content should tell you quite a bit and being erased. But this is big, and considering how big that flare was, and yes, it wasn't facing us, but who knows what it may do and how it may be sideswiping us at any point. I'm not really sure, but this looks like the rumblings are getting stronger. They're getting more powerful. They're getting more consistent. And yeah, we're just going to see where that goes. I just think it's interesting that the Schumann is now blacked out right before we had, like I said, this huge solar flare that came off the sun this morning. So very, very interesting. All right, friends, that's enough for our solar weather for today. So let's get into the reading. The first thing I'm going to show you is last week's reading. Okay, just familiarize yourself. All that strong Cancerian energy, the One of Roses and commitment, the dog. We had the Chariot, which is the Cancer card. We had the Wheel of Fortune. We had the Four of Cups reversed. Five of Roses. I mean, just everything surrounding it is about this Cancerian, consolidated loyalty, commitment, emotional commitment, right? The will to proceed. Cancer is a cardinal sign. It has momentum, right? And so either a wheel turning, it can be the roots growing down. There is momentum behind the energy of cardinal water, which seems really strange when you think about it being a vessel or a womb or a garden that holds. But those boundaries are created by way of the consolidation of all those threads, either ideas or relationships, communications with people, whatever it is, you make a decision, you put down your roots, and you consolidate that power. And so part of that is the commitment, is the action in some ways, is the will to proceed is what pushes that momentum. So I just want to show you this because the Four of Cups as reversed as our outcome is something that you want to put a pin in for a moment. Because when we look at today's reading, as I bring it up here, we have the Four of Cups now upright in the same exact position. So what had initially been, either the dark side of the Cancerian energy, and the Four of Cups is truly the moon in the last decan or decan of Cancer. It is the moon in Cancer card, that Four of Cups, because it is a structurally sound, even for just a moment, emotional security and stability. And that's why it's considered luxury, because those moments where we are emotionally held by some sort of physical structure, either a family, a marriage, a spiritual community, an actual womb, a root system, whatever it is that it represents, that is a moment of luxury. As long as you realize that even that stability is subjected to disintegration or disruption just naturally. But what has gone from a negative or a pushing away or pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone truly has now moved to a position or has righted itself to give us, I think, an opportunity to feel that emotional security in that moment. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's there's a lot of fire energy in this reading today. So let me take this away so we're not too distracted by it. There's a lot of fire energy in this reading today. There's a lot of forces, right? 5 of forces, 3 of forces. You have 2 sequential archangel cards, Raphael and Michael, right next to each other in the root of this reading. So, and there's a lot, the 6 of Wands is pretty standard victory type of card at the center of things. And we've been through a lot of it's very difficult with this Princess of Swords. Here, let's just get into it. What I want to show you, though, is that there is still a lot of the Cancerian energy, but there's also now this sense that we have to do something. We have to make the most of this, right? We can create a space, and we know that there's going to be growth. They know that there's going to be passion and transformation and creation. And this appears to have all the backing of like the divine intervention in so many ways, miracles with Archangel Raphael, divine courage and power with Archangel Michael at the root of things here. And I think that this is a moment of security that is probably necessary so that we can move forward into the more difficult emotional experiences and actually have there's a point where you have to take risk, and this is where we're kind of getting prepared for. And in these moments right now, especially where this full moon in Cancer is establishing how the seed doesn't grow unless or it doesn't germinate without essentially the crucifixion of the seed, right? The shell of the seed has to burst open. The seed has to be no more in order to start growing. And there's a certain amount of risk that comes along with the giving over of that part of ourselves to the growth of something that we don't necessarily see yet, but creative risks are really part of the Leo archetype, the fifth house, and where the sun is. And so, when we get to this full moon, the imagery for the sun at the full moon, and we're going to have a Mercury Cazimi as well. So there's going to be the conjunction with Mercury in its retrograde and the sun right as we're having the full moon. And the Sabian symbol is pretty interesting. It represents a woman who kind of embraces this idea of nudism as a way to overcome her psychological inhibitions, right? So when you start to unpack that, you start to look at how the nudism is not about eroticism or pornography or sexuality. It is about returning back to the original wisdom of nature and the body as part of returning, embracing the timeless aspects of the unfolding of nature and the cyclical aspect of it and the wisdom of the body, and being able to release ourselves from all of the layers of inhibition, right? And so whatever those aspects socially that have put unnecessary restrictions on us is something that we're going to, if we can identify with the opportunity to release ourselves in some way, and that will require some sort of collective action, or, Capricorn is also cardinal. It is the opposite of Cancer. So there's momentum in the earth element, in growth, in crystallization and solidification, right? The scaffolding. If we can release ourselves from the burdens of all of these ways that society has layered on top of us of how to be, this will illuminate within each of us in our own personal way the ways in which we can let go of our attachment to that, so that something can start to germinate or grow, if that makes sense. But we are very much focused, I think, as we're going to unpack this reading, on creating that space. We know that creation and expansion are coming. We are building the space for it, and we can kind of, I don't want to say sit back and bask in it, but there's a moment here with this full moon that is just like, oh, it's all part of the cycle. Like, life is, and the world around me truly is not my enemy, but and there's nothing wrong with this kind of maternal security and a sense of emotional luxury, as long as we accept that we have to eventually release that in order for our potential to grow. And it seems so, I don't know, it seems so it doesn't seem that drastic of a revelation when you're intellectualizing it or thinking about it, but where in your life, right, has this burden really presented itself? And where in Aquarius, and where is Aquarius for you? Because you're going to see the chronology of that. So Capricorn into Aquarius, looking at the houses, what's going on there for you? You know, where is this burden? Because not only is it releasing you from that, but you also then can be a conscious and cooperative part of a society that holds the values that you want to be part of. And that's the big part of Aquarius. And now Venus is here. Venus is in Aquarius. So she's hyper. I mean, the relationships are more on the larger social sphere. We become very sensitive to the meaning of our collective voice, civilization as a whole, how the resonance is timeless, even if the structures are going through their own natural process. So there's something to be said for that, and there's something to be said for the way that it binds us all together in terms of the idea of society, right? And so it's no accident that the sun comes into Aquarius right around the time that in the U.S. we have Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It's a day of service where you intentionally act and find your own expression through serving the community, which is such an Aquarius type of thing. And it's when you discover that your voice actually matters in the whole. Okay, so let's start speaking of Venus in Aquarius, I swear that was going somewhere, and it's going right here, because we have here the Princess of Swords, and I always get this Pallas Athena vibe with this card. It's Venus in the air sign. So Earth and air don't have anywhere in the zodiac, they don't have a place where they get along at all. So it's either in a square, like Capricorn to Libra, or it's in a quincunx, right? It's a 150-degree angle. Or the only place it really does seem to get along is something like Aquarius and Capricorn, right? They're in a semi-sextile to each other. It's a 30-degree angle. It's one piece of a larger process of inner transformation and investment in making the most out of difficult situations. Okay, those sextiles require us to participate, but there is harmony there. There is stability. So a semi-sextile is half of that. It's one piece of it. And 30 degrees from Capricorn to Aquarius, right? This is just after like a new moon, for instance. You're just getting into, it's very instinctual. It's not something that you are consciously participating in. It's something that you are feeling and experiencing organically. And but Venus doesn't, Venus rules Taurus, and then coming into Gemini, I thought it was pretty awesome actually that Venus was in, at 0 degrees Aquarius, was in a trine to the moon when it was in conjunction with 0 degrees Gemini, which is Alcyon, the main star in the Pleiades star cluster. And I think that there was a blessing around that in terms of our own minds and our own consciousness being the barrier that keeps us from just kind of, being submerged into the entire collective unconscious, that our consciousness does have a function in terms of our experience and learning and exploration and knowledge and curiosity, which a Princess of Swords is very curious. But the thing about her curiosity is that she has to then come into contact with all of the she starts to come into contact with all of the ways that the duality of the mind starts to create all of these oppositional forces. And she's just then learning how to really manage that, the Princess of Swords. So when she's reversed, right? Just in general, this is a very perceptive and very rigorous person in terms of their mental acuity. They're practical, they're clever. They show skills when dealing with material matters of conflicting opinions, right? This is using those more organic and kind of natural sensitivity to people and situations or material matters in order to kind of, find the solution. And so there's a lot of generosity, there's a lot of kindness, there's that Venus energy coming into the picture. As once she loses, if this is a person or you representing how, once you lose that inner sense of fear and insecurity, there can be a real outpouring here. And trusting yourself, really. So when she's reversed, the dark side of this energy and these people are very cruel, they're very malicious, very spiteful. Using those skills with dealing with material matters to manipulate the situation or use their cleverness or their perceptive nature to take advantage of that situation or to fight back. There's also a failure to recognize facts here. So just kind of avoiding the conflicting opinions entirely. There's aggression, there's destruction. These are all the worst case scenarios with this individual. Personally, I really feel like that this is, we have been really battling in some ways and looking for a place where we can address these material matters in a way that we're not overcome by the conflicting opinion. And I think the moon in Gemini right now is a great way to tap into this without necessarily getting too caught up in our sense feels and how, in the material aspect. The thing about the moon in Gemini is that we may find the conflicting opinion is within our own emotions, right? And we're like, I feel this and I feel that. I'm experiencing this and I'm experiencing that. And I think that I do feel like that it has been a struggle. And I think some people more than others have been really felt beat down by the sharpness of the intellect of the conflicting opinions of especially Saturn in Aquarius, right? It has just been this force field that we are not getting around. We have to just, find our center within or as a part of it. And that may have meant we've had to go to battle in some ways. And Pallas Athena is in Cancer right now, and she's also in this retrograde. And I think that this leads to this as well, is that when you have a reversal of this energy, or any card really, you're going to internalize that experience. You may be going deeper into what you've already covered, especially in the issue, or especially when it comes to planets and celestial bodies that are in their retrograde. You're going back over territory. It's like going back in time, but it's an illusion of going back in time. So there's a lot of ways to work with this energy. You may find that that people have been acting in this way, or there are people in your life that have been the negative part of this, the spiteful and malicious and cruel and really destructive, and unnecessarily kind of battling as a means to, as a reaction, right? And we, something I just talked about, has especially also with the post on social media yesterday. Are we going to continue to react, or are we going to follow the pathway of the moon's own journey and start to take the initiative? I think we've really needed this victory here, whatever it is for you. And I suspect that all of us in our own ways are having this heart energy. And this is Jupiter and Leo, 6 of Wands, victory at the heart. I mean, this is victory in the heart. And, what is it for you that has allowed you to feel this sense of not something that is necessary. It's not like it's coming out of nowhere and just handed to you. The happiness, the victory, the glory, the fulfillment, the creative fulfillment, the satisfaction here has come out of past struggles, right? It's success through our actual energy and industry and triumph over our own struggles, not something that's necessarily just given to us. And you look at the Princess of Swords, she looks like she's struggling even when it's upright, and it's reversed. It's really been a struggle. We may have really started to succumb to all of those conflicting opinions to the point where I just can't even maintain myself. This feels to me that we've collectively chosen to turn the corner consciously. And there is a sense of victory and glory for those who have crossed a threshold, right? We talked about that last week where we reached that threshold and now we've crossed it, and we've crossed it either in terms of all of the negative aspects of Chiron where we're a victim and we can't, get out of blaming other people for our situation or other situations for where we are, or we have accepted the position of really trying to make sense of, energies that don't often really fit together, which is the air and the earth. And we have a sense of victory now, of fulfillment at our heart space. And maybe that has been because we've had to release some things. I would say it's really just releasing the pain and the guilt and the shame and the lack of worthiness that has kept us reacting to our triggers instead of taking initiative to actually get out ahead of those things. And it's going to be different for everyone. This is why generalized astro readings are helpful to learn how to read astrology, but the real juiciness comes from your own chart, because it is a unique signature to you based on when you were born, where you were born, and I mean, that's the primary, it is the beginning of a cycle, and everybody's blueprint is unique to them, just like a thumbprint. So, boy, I feel like we've needed this win in our heart. And like I said, it's not necessarily coming out of nowhere, but then you have Archangel Raphael. Speaking of Leo energy, Archangel Raphael is related to one of the royal fixed stars, which is Regulus. It's the heart of the lion. So this Leo energy is starting to come back around in a way that is so subtle. It's going to have Black Moon Lilith. The moon's going to be in Leo, and that's going to be about it for a while, because everything else is going to come into Aquarius. And like I said, the sun is at its detriment. It gets very weak in Aquarius because it wants to be the center of, it wants to be the heart, and Aquarius, and it is the heart, but the heart is only as functional. The heart's function is only as good as your circulatory system, right? You can have a strong heart, but if you got stuff going on in the rest of your circulatory system, then it doesn't matter how strong your heart is. But if the circulatory system is strong and you become aware of that through your relationship to the collective, to your community, to your peers, right? Your larger associations, whatever it represents for you, the collective consciousness. But the blood vessels don't mean anything without a pump or a heart, regardless if it's a pump or if it's an electrical system. This is bringing this energy back to the base of this all. So Archangel Raphael is connected to Regulus. It is the heart of the lion. It's one of the royal fixed stars. And Raphael is about blessings and miracles, right? Raphael, as you can see, really comes as a human, as a guide, as bringing this green orb and then the pink heart chakra. These two colors are very much related to the heart. And healing, right? And a sense of nurturing. Archangel Raphael, you don't see the wings, right? There's no indication that this is, in fact, a divine intervention. But in fact, this is the root of our axis of power, is Archangel Raphael. And again, this does portend some type of miracle or blessing, but we have to invite it into our life. We have to have a resonance in our own heart that is attracting this, because if we don't, it will just bounce off, or it won't be attracted. It'll be in dissonance. So this is such a powerful, very active reading right now. I was kind of pleasantly surprised with the energy that's being presented right now. And so Archangel Raphael, some other things to consider is that it does carry the energy of love, of miracles, of family, of blessed journeys, right? There is a lot of expansive energy here too, so that also could translate to journeying physically or culturally or cosmically. So Raphael opens a door, right? It opens a door and helps renewal of a lost dream, reuniting family members, healing, right? This is miracles, but it's just the opening of the door, right? Just like the heart, we open it by, taking taking away as much as we can, surgically removing, in some cases, the scar tissue over our heart, right? But it's not doing the work necessarily for us. It is just the resonance that brings these renewals to our front door, basically. So this, and then to have Archangel Michael as part of it as well was pretty incredible in terms of just how powerful this really is. So, and we'll get to that. The Three of Forces, right? This is another creative, expansive, and coming from the Cancer to Leo transition, which is opposite of where we are right now. So it's good to have these balance points, the bird's nest. So it's important to recognize that we are focused on a force of creativity expansion. We are aware of the time to focus on starting new things or expanding on what we're doing, right? But we have to put some effort to create the space, right? We do know that. We are aware of that. In fact, I think we are fully engaged in this process at this point of like, yes, let's start creating the nest in order for this to come in. And again, our hearts are a big part of attracting the resonance of what we want into our life. It's coming from the field that emanates from that place, from the heart space. And then we have, of course, our Four of Cups, or our luxury. So like I said, the luxury is momentary. It's something that is not permanent, and to consider it that way, that's those stabilized emotions, you can enjoy it. You can feel protected. You can feel fulfilled. There is a sense of maternity and protection, right? If you are carrying a child in your womb, you're not about taking risks emotionally. You are about protecting and nurturing that which is growing, okay? And there is nothing wrong with that. It's just the creative risk that comes from actually more like the Five of Cups is that disappointment of Mars and Scorpio. There eventually is that transition into the willful giving of oneself over to the realm of sharing, cooperation, communion. And that's where the risk comes in. That's where the intimacy comes in, is in Scorpio, right? This is also where betrayal and trust. So right now, I think that this is leading us to this full moon, right? And this moment of like, just fulfilled by releasing the burden in many ways and just being held by that which we've invested, we've been loyal to, we've given ourselves to, right? We've committed ourselves to this process. So now, love without risk, right? This is not a place we're supposed to stay. It is a place that we're supposed to, take a breather at, enjoy it, take care of and protect that which is growing. And again, that Three of Forces really does suggest that we are focused on creating a space in our own consciousness that will allow this expansion. Okay. So, okay. I can't help it. So when it comes to the guidance, well, first let's look at Archangel Michael. So 8 to the 9, right? It's very sequential, very much coming in the 1-2 punch. You got the door opened with Raphael. Some sort of miracle steps into your life, into where your power comes from, maybe into your subconscious realm, right? Maybe you don't even realize it. Steps in. Somebody that you don't even know, or some sort of random occurrence steps in and opens a door. And then you have Michael that is like, there is your courage and your divine channel of power, your flaming heart. Again, Archangel Raphael opens the door. Where is your courage coming from? Archangel Michael, number 1, is connected to Aldebaran, so another royal fixed star. And this is where Mars is, and is going to station direct on the 12th. So just keep that in mind, that this energy is very present right now, especially where the moon and Mars are going to be in a conjunction like today. Okay, so this is a channel of divine power. This is the flaming heart. This is lifting up those who are can't lift themselves, right? The children, the innocence, the playfulness. And this is number 9 is, to me, the 9th house in Sagittarius. The flaming heart leads to a purpose. And Archangel Michael seems to really represent that, when that energy, and that he's the leader of the heavenly army, right? So there is courage growing, increasing power, knowing what action to take next, and to trust your convictions, because that is based on sincere purpose that is developed in meaning, in belief of the paradigm that gives our relationships meaning. I think that Raphael is opening the door, and this power, this is Mars, especially the moon and Mars coming together today in a conjunction. It is really a guide point. It's not as present in the energy of us right now, but is standing by and has the opportunity to be connected to through the moon when it meets Mars. Okay, so trusting your convictions, knowing what action to take next, and this is when you become a conduit for divine creativity to move through you, as opposed to your ego making all of the decisions. This is one of the biggest traps of the New Age manifestation, the whole thing, right? It's not based in a deep, profound truth about our ability to co-create reality, but it leaves out the relationship with God completely, and the law of nature. And so it puts the ego and the sense of I, as capital I, as the one doing everything. I am manifesting. I am doing this, right? Blah, 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 blah. And cuts out the relationship. And it's all in the relationship. That's the sweet spot. And so, the trusting of our convictions and knowing what actions to take and being a channel of divine power means we kind of have to move our ego out of the way, the seed, the shell of the seed, in order for this growth that is a dynamic process and not an ego process to happen. So Archangel Michael is kind of like standing by. The moon meets Mars by the end of today, and you're like, oh, this is what this feels like. Doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to jump on anything right now, but it gives you a sense of what action is possible to take, especially when Mars stations direct. It's Raphael that is at the root here, I think, the heart that is really the source of our power right now, and to pay attention to that. Now, the unicorn, I love the unicorn, and it popped out in a way that I was like, I don't know if I'm going to count this. And then it came out with the Roadrunner, and I was like, clearly this card is important today. So the unicorn is pretty simple in the way that we conceptualize it, which is indulge your creative, imaginative, and magical side. Some people think the unicorn is correspondent to that magical side of Capricorn, right? So you have the mountain goat, but you also have the unicorn, which I think is very interesting, or the narwhal. I kind of like that too. And if you think about Capricorn as the top of the chart, right, and the zenith, then you have this singular kind of antenna or horn in some ways that's pointing up to, pointing up, and is the zenith of our contribution. There's some connections here, but it also has a strong Piscean energy to it about indulging creativity, imagination, and magic, and artistic expression. So one of the main transits today, I think that's important to draw upon, is Uranus is in an exact sextile with the asteroid Vesta. And we'll look at that too on the chart if I remember. Asteroid Vesta. They're in a sextile, exactly. And asteroid Vesta is in Pisces. And Uranus in its retrograde, especially when it stations direct, which is going to be in January, and things start really shifting around. There is, where we've been is not, the traditional knowledge of where we've been is not going to give us, it's not going to confirm where we're going, right? The soil does not confirm what all the potential of the seed's growth. It's just the soil and what has been, right? Everything comes back into the soil. All of the growth processes that have run their course have come back into the soil and have enriched it. But that doesn't mean that that's exactly what to expect in the next cycle. And so there's a sense of really needing to tap into the muse here. That's what I'm trying to get at. And so whatever indulges your creativity, your artistic expression, your imagination is something that is going to be really important in this process. And when we look at all of the animals surrounding it, I think that there's a sense of needing to get into that quiet space in order to get the inspiration from within rather than from externally, and to know the difference between what is your higher self speaking to you and God speaking to you, right? Source or divine creator, whatever resonates for you. However you have that relationship, it's about the relationship, knowing the difference between that and possibly overlays of lower astral or influences in other ways. And, there's still, it comes through the imagination regardless. This is saying to indulge that, to give space to that. And the Roadrunner, this is keep your sense of humor and don't take things too seriously. And I would say Jupiter in Aries right now, in the second degree of Aries, is very much in a position of being the objective consciousness, of being, of humor, being the means in which the comedian, let's put it this way, the comedian is able to, or the jester, right, is able to provide that mirror to the subjective experiencer in a way that disarms the ego enough to see it objectively and to laugh at it. And so this is about keeping the sense of humor and not taking things so seriously when there is seemingly a lot of really serious energy. But I would say this is, this comes back to, I think, being able to even look at yourself and be like, wow, look how far I've come. Wow, isn't it funny the way that I've reacted to these things? Or, just having an objective consciousness that doesn't wound your inner sense of being so much, so that you can actually see yourself in your own progression. And something as simple as just not taking things so seriously and having a sense of humor, I feel like is just generally a good medicine anyway, right? To be able to laugh and to be able to laugh at ourselves and to have a sense of humor. But there also does seem to be this sense of like, take it easy. Right? Like, get into your artistic expression and imagination. What is it that you do want to invite into this space? What are you creating space for? Right? Like, what is that ideal that you want to substantiate with the help of Neptune right now? I think that when you can take a step back from how serious everything is, and it's not to say that it's not, but we all know that there are so many layers to keep us locked in a feedback loop of fear and of the unknown and our own guilt and shame, that we can't actually give ourselves any opportunity to use our imagination and be like, ooh, what could it be? How do I want to fill this space? Who do I want to be? What do I want to be part of? All of these things. And when we can really indulge this, I think this is where it opens the door for real blessings to come in. And the potential is there, right? Archangel Raphael, number 8, that is that's the phases of the moon, right? That is the Gnostic number of Christ. That is infinity turned on its side, or turned upright. So we know that there is a lot of, there's just a lot of potential for this right now, and that it'll be necessary to tap back into this at some point very soon in order to continue on with our creative expansion, whatever it is. Now, We're very focused on that, right? The bird's nest and the creative expansion, what's coming. Now the mouse that to me was like, okay, this says you're overlooking some important details, so pay closer attention to what's going on. And when you have the 5 of forces along with this, the summertime, this is a lot of yang energy, again, a lot of heightened solar activity. And it's like we can visualize and really tap into the apex of what it is that that is growing, right? The summertime represents that apex of what is growing, and this is not far from the Three of Forces, right? Summertime is when the birds are leaving the nest and being able to, experience their full participation in nature, in society, whatever. So we can really easily visualize this. And there's a lot of action that comes along with this energy. But there's also a real need to be very tapped into the subtle cues that are around us. And specifically, when it says about important details, contracts, right? Contracts and agreements. Even if they are contracts and agreements within yourself, with your spiritual journey, this is different for all of us. But this is real. Be sensitive. Just like the mouse is. The mouse survives by being sensitive to all of the reverberations around it, so it knows how to navigate its territory and its reality without being destroyed, basically, or being safe from predators. And so I would say that this is just one of those moments that's like, okay, it's not all fortune and glory right now, even though in the heart there is this victory. And I think that's really important. I think we've really have needed something to give us, to realize that it hasn't all been for nothing, but there's something here that's catching my attention. And we have to be very, very, like, read every line. You know what I mean? We have to be clear with every word that passes our lips or comes from, comes into a state of intention. Okay. Because also what is part of this energy is really strong acceleration. Okay. You want to be able to take your step, just like Archangel Michael, when it's time to take your steps towards your personal goals, when it's time to accelerate your action, you want to be able to do that in a way that is fully devoted and isn't second guessing what you're doing and is completely intentional. And so this mouse is like, okay, just be sensitive to what you're building for, because if you are not completely conscious of this, and when Mars stations direct and we start action or acting on things, when action is accelerated, if we start moving forward and we haven't attended to all of the details, every line of code, right, we're gonna get what we have created the space for. So, and that's not to make anybody afraid of anything. I mean, like I said, the energy is significant right now to eventually act on where we're at right now. And this mouse is just one of those moments of just be tuned in. And part of that is when you're indulging your artistic imagination and your creativity, and you're not taking all of the doom and gloom like seriously at the moment, you will tap into your inspiration. When you're tapped into compassion, your creative flow is just, it's exponentially stronger than if you are attempting to create from a place of fear, and specifically in from a place of recklessness as well, right? Taking calculated risk is way different than being reckless. And that's actually a great segue into the astrology chart here, because we have a big Vega and Lyran Starseed activation going on this week. And if there's any Starseed group that knows about taking calculated risks, it is definitely the Lyran Starseed. So let's bring that up. There's our awesome. All right. One thing I'm really liking about AstroSeek lately is that they're also putting the actual phase of the moon of where we are. And I really appreciate that. So I never put this chart back. So we're going to put it back to the 3rd so that we can look at what's going on. I'm going to check in with the stream here real quick too and make sure, see if anybody has any questions. And okay, yeah, Phoenix Rule says she's shoveling my walkway from the snow. And the positive side, I found out my daughter is capable of doing it. That is amazing. Oh my gosh. I sorry it took me so long to respond to that because I just came over to the chat. But that is amazing. And we had a similar experience last night with stacking firewood for my dad. You know, he's just not able to do it like he used to, of course, for the wood stove. And I was gonna, you know, the adults were gonna do it. And then by the time I got around to being like, okay, it's time to stack wood, all the kids were down there doing it. And I was like, oh, well, just let them do that then. Who knew that they actually could be productive in that way? So I love shoveling snow. Speaking of Lear and Starseed stuff, if you are a person that likes manual labor, you know, of your own accord, not if you're being, you know, compelled to do it by some outside force. But if you're a person that really likes to do physical labor, use your body, super athletic, enjoying the physical experiences, even if that is like hard physical work, like farming, for instance, that is a Lyran trait through and through. And I love doing stuff like that, you know, chopping or carrying firewood, right? Raking, shoveling snow. I mean, I used to be a landscaper and growing cannabis commercially, and that is it's all farm work. So that is a Lyran trait. And actually, geez, I can't even imagine. I just can't believe like how naturally these segues are coming, because the actual transit that I want to talk about, that is conjunct Vega, like exactly, is the Sun conjunct Vega in a trine exactly to Uranus. So we have this Earth-based trine this week as well, and that particular degree is the transition from the crystallization of our purpose into something substantial, right? Actual physical material structures, into the group integration to maintaining that. And it's a degree that has to do with being very physical, exercising, coming together and performing some sort of, physical set of skills or I liken it to, if you remember, if you had field day when you were a kid. I don't know if they still do that. But when I was a kid, one of the last days of school was called field day, and the entire school was into two teams, and had all of these different events set up that were all outdoor events, like, three-legged races and relay races and just all kinds of kind of track and fieldy type of things, and it was called field day. And that's the picture I get when I picture 16 degrees of Capricorn. The Sabian symbol is, school, kids in their gym clothes. You remember gym clothes? Oh my gosh. Kids in their gym clothes, right, are outside on the school grounds. And so there's something coordinated about it, but there's something very physical, something that has to do with everybody exercising their physical nature in order to maintain that which has crystallized, which is some sort of culture or some sort of institution, right? Whatever it is, it's about coming together and the need to really exercise that together. And the trine to Uranus, I mean, you got to remember, too, that these two bodies, the Sun and Uranus, rule opposite signs. So for them to come into a trine like this, especially in these Earth signs, really, it's a very favorable thing. Balancing and supporting energies that normally are oppositional to each other in signs that have to do with the nuts and bolts of reality, materiality, resources, energy resources, the collective resources of a culture or societal institutions or a larger extended family, for instance, or just nature, right? The ecosystem itself needs to still fulfill its function, and that requires that people or elements are coming individually to act. And even though we don't necessarily, like I said, we don't know what's coming. And in fact, Uranus is shifting things around so much in the realm of materiality or resource. And I would say even in the harmonics of the planet, it's shifting around under the surface so much that we can't even if we wanted to try to confirm where we're going with where we've been, we can't, because the conditions of where we've been and where we are going are constantly in flux, right? It's like glitching in and out. And the sun in Capricorn, conjunct Vega, is those, the Lyran starseed signature is connected to something ancient, something that is a formula that unfolds, right? That is something that it's time itself. And in terms of our experience, right, living in this third dimensional reality, the way that time is just a means to organize this particular dimension of experience. But still, when we are identified with the process and what that means for the individual acting and exercising their role within it, at the very least, we can find some stability in that process. And it doesn't mean that we are participating in the structures that are being disintegrated and have been with Pluto going through Capricorn. That doesn't mean that at all. It means that the institutions of society, of a culture, of a family, of nature, of an ecosystem are in and of themselves valuable and contingent upon our participation. And so if we want to, find a place where we each identify with this action, at the very least, I feel like it will give us this capacity to handle the glitching of the realm of resource in itself as things are changing and shifting, right? Once Uranus starts moving direct, which I said is going to be this month in January, we're going to be facing the storm directly, and the changes are going to be the drastic, unexpected changes are going to be things that are happening more, I think, in the external. So in the meantime, with this trine, I think it's the Lyran starseeds, they have done this over and over. So there is a sense of fearlessness. There's a leadership quality that is natural to Lyran starseeds, because this is a process that they have unfolded with since the beginning of the galaxy, right? And this is something that gives them this sense of leadership, and they take calculated risks, right? They know what it takes in order to accomplish something. And that's where you get this creative risk that leads to a calculated risk, a business decision, something that is a contribution to something more than each of what we could do on our own. And I just think that the Lyran signature, it's just so strong right now, and especially with this week, and especially because Mercury is coming back into this territory. It's going to meet the sun at the full moon. So again, when we understand that it's not systems in and of themselves, but the layers of the system that, humanity is basically distorted and perverted along the way, when we're free from that, we can actually grow to our full potential. And there's a lot that goes on with the Lyran story in terms of their relationship to the rest of the galaxy, to the fact that it's this idea that war is definitely, and battle has been a reality for the signature that represents the Lyran starseeds. And we all participate in what is, coming down the pipeline, even if we're just riding it at this point, we've participated in getting it there too. So that's something else to consider as well. But long game, right? The Lyrans got the long game, right? They are able to see the whole pattern and act on it, unfold with it without fear, right? And so Lyran starseeds are going to be the people that, do the shit that everybody else is afraid of, because they're just like, oh, I've done materiality for so many lifetimes now that, I know what what it means, and they enjoy their experience quite a bit, and they tend to really, it's not so much they alienate people like the Andromedans can kind of do. It's more of just like, I on the prize, baby, eye on the prize. And that can sometimes take away from the more intimate connections, or just like in, how Cancer is opposite of this. So you can see that Lilith is still in Cancer, and Pallas Athena is actually in Cancer too. And so when the moon comes into Cancer in the next couple of days leading up to the full moon, I mean, it's gonna be full inner sensitivity to all of these experiences as well. So, but we can still enjoy field day. We can still find our own sense of belonging and spiritual sustainment and expression through just the process of exercising these muscles, right? Even if we don't know where the hell it's all going, we at least know what it takes to put these institutions into effect. And I think that's going to be something we have to consider. As we are also simultaneously living with the destructive process of all of this. We still have to consider that there are new cycles that are unfolding, that we are growing, and that we still have to participate whether we like it or not. So, and our participation has an impact on the whole. And I think Venus coming into Aquarius is really going to make us very sensitive to that. Up until now, it's just been Saturn holding the line here. But Venus now, in her, the way that she softens all the edges, and in the way that she brings real meaning and value to us in a very real way, to this Aquarian civilizational, necessity, right? The resonance is a function of what we each bring to the table. So I think that's going to start becoming really important to us, and the resonance of our communities is going to be something we're all going to start really valuing directly in how how we interpret that value, how it allows us to feel in our senses, and what we want to nurture, right? Venus is a nurturer, right? She's the empress. She's nurturing. She is the soil in many ways. So I love that she's now in Aquarius. So I just want to take some time. This is going to be something that's more in the weekly astrology report in terms of the specific transits, but just let's kind of look at what the next week is going to unfold for us leading up to this full moon, right? So we're in our waxing gibbous phase. We are now have the opportunity to start intentionally, like I said, dissolving those structures, destroying obstacles instead of reacting to them. The moon will have met Mars by the end of today at 9 degrees Gemini, and we become very aware of the quiver filled with arrows. What are the arrows in our quiver, right? And this is where that mouse really comes into effect. Again, it's about a sensitivity in our inner landscape to all of these things. And we know that our ideas can be like weapons, and we can pierce through our own ego if we got the focus, right? And this is just getting us geared up for it, right? Giving us a chance to tap into what are, what is the collection of arrows that we do have? And where are we going to where are we going to focus it? So that's by the end of today, okay? And we also see that Venus comes into a sextile with Jupiter. And again, this is about keeping our sense of humor because there are things that we don't expect. And that's part of 2 degrees of Aquarius is conjunct Altair, which is in the constellation Aquila, the eagle. Okay. And Altair is the neck of the eagle. And we can't, for everything that we build up through our civilization, time is going to come take away and source, right? We don't make the plan. That is something outside of the realm of the individual consciousness. Our job is to be in relationship to it. And part of that is sometimes there are bolts of lightning that show up and they make change and it's unexpected, and It's about what we do in the face of that. And so I think that that's where this Roadrunner really comes into effect this week, is keeping a sense of humor, being able to see the big picture from both angles of of yourself, through both angles, subjectively and objectively, because this type of energy and disruption is what tests us and shows us, where to put our attention when shit comes out that we don't expect, but is really just a function of homeostasis and balance, right? So this is the 4th, and you can see that Lilith is coming back into late Cancer again, which means she's going to end up being conjunct Procyon, opposite Pluto. This has been a theme for months now, is Black Moon Lilith, or the lunar apogee, being conjunct Procyon and opposite Pluto. So, pulling that kind of primal need to feel connected and transformed, being brought back into the waters of our own soul, right? The root system, our family, the place that we're really committed. And the ways that Lilith will, if we ignore this or we attempt to artificially fill that void instead of letting the sacred flame inhabit that space, then you find yourself really kind of just reveling in the destruction of Pluto and Capricorn. And that's not really very useful either, because you aren't really leaving the space within yourself for something new to grow. And I think there are a lot of people that are just like really... there are very specific factions of people who are fully siphoning the power out of Pluto and Capricorn right now for themselves. And that's another dark way, or ego-based way, that Lilith will express herself, is when it goes to the other end, and it's just like, it's like a black hole, right? I'm going to take all this power that's being released from Pluto and Capricorn, and I'm going to take it all for my own, and just take it and consolidate it and hold it, right? Those dark sides of the Cancer energy are very present with Lilith too, and they can come out of trauma, and they can come out of fear as well, and they can come out of places that are like, no, never again am I going back there, so I am going to or feel that disconnection based on this, because that's what happens when you have this fear of nature, or fear of death, right? And people who are hyper materialistic, I feel like that is, they remain chained, right? That devil card in the tarot, they remain chained out of choice, because being cut loose and responsible for oneself is a lot scarier. And you can see that being expressed in so many different ways right now. And it's really, in a lot of ways, it's really sad. It's very difficult and frustrating sometimes, especially if it has your family or people who you're close to, people you work with, whatever. It can be really frustrating to just kind of observe or be witness to this type of energy if it's right close to you. So the best thing you can do really is, again, it's an inside job, right? It's really about what is going on within each of us, because that's going to translate to what comes forward collectively from there. So what else is going on? And of course, at the same time, Lilith is, in this trine to Neptune, and again, substantiating something consciously by consciously and intentionally surrendering a part of ourselves in order to allow the spirit of source or divinity to move through us. Neptune making it really very just, effortless, right? Just dissolving all the boundaries here. And perhaps this is coming from a deep sensitivity to what is coming. People who are tapped into their imagination, to this sense of artistic, creative potential, which does come through Pisces, right? Like being inspired by the muse. Oftentimes, these are the people in society who are able to articulate what most people are feeling and don't even know that they're feeling. And so I see this trine here this week, again, being part of that, and being part of that mouse, being very sensitive to, and not cutting ourselves off from the possibility of miracles or transformation, but realizing that that space within and that void is exactly where, God steps in and that miracle happens. So, but again, we may find ourselves really sensitive to, all of the more of the the propaganda, basically. I mean, there's a lot of propaganda connected to Pisces in the 12th house, right? It's like a film, literally like a film, you know what I mean? Like a screen that you see everything through, and or a fog in some ways. So we'll see. Mercury is, like I said, Mercury is in its retrograde. It's going to meet the sun. So there is definitely some incredible, illumination through our editing process right now with Mercury, or I should say the auditing process with Mercury in Capricorn doing its retrograde. It's just like, oh, I finally found the thing that was like draining all of, the resources of this institution, and we're gonna just release ourselves from it finally, and it's gonna be like, oh, it was my own ego getting in the way. Oh my gosh, now this new growth can finally start to take root in my life. It's gonna, many of us, I think, are already here, and so we're ready for this full moon and the full saturation of this point of culmination. So as we go through the week, all these different types of relationships coming forward to bring our awareness to this. And like I said, here is on the 5th, Thursday the 5th. This is where the Sun and Uranus are in that trine. The Sun will be exactly conjunct Vega, and I'll have to look on my astronomy software and see how close it is in terms of its declination, because if it's close in declination as well, it's going to be even more powerful. So that is something to look forward to, and I'll probably post that on social media if you are interested in keeping up with that, or you might have your own astronomy software and you can look at it. Stellarium is free, by the way, and you can download that onto your computer, and then you can use that software like you're at your own planetarium. It's pretty cool. I use Celestron. That came with my telescope. But Stellarium is free, and it's what I used when I was taking classes in cosmology and astrophysics. That was the one. So really cool program. And then you can start to learn the relationship in real time based on celestial coordinates. Anyway, I digress. Here we go. We're coming into the 6th now. This is our full moon, so you can already see that the energy is growing. These two are coming together. That also means that Mercury is going to come into a trine with Uranus in the same degree in conjunction with Vega. So there's a lot of this Lyran energy floating around right now, and very easily accessible to our individual personal consciousness, right? Our creativity and our reviewing, proofreading mind right now. Our auditing mind is going back over all of the pathways that have led us to where we are right now, and not being afraid, right? Doing it with fearlessness and a sense of boldness as well. And once we realize those structures, it'll be just this release, right? That we're just like, it's like, being nude when you're not used to doing it, right? Like if you've been to any type of like clothing optional, soaking or bathhouse or anything this is not a sexual thing at all, right? This is like retreat in sacred waters, things like that. And sometimes these places are clothing optional, and for some people that's a huge release to just let go of that and just be part of nature and the way you were born into this world, right? So when we take away all of that stuff, and so I'm just belaboring this point now. The other thing too is the moon is going to be in a square to Chiron right before it is the full moon. So that'll be that one kind of last, strong character in the face of a very inflamed trigger and wanting to change something. The trigger kind of influencing us to try to change something in ourselves before, before it naturally would do so. And I think that that's 13 degrees of Aries. We always see some sort of false flag happening. And with Chiron, it's meant to be a false flag. It's meant to trigger us into this state of like, oh, victimhood, or, oh, I have to save people, or, oh, I can never be who I want to be in this society. So, but this is also where our superpower comes from, is Chiron. So, even in our suffering, right? Where's our character? We need a strong will builds our character. And this moon squaring Chiron right before the full moon is pretty instrumental in all of this as well. Just bringing our awareness. And of course, Lilith is opposite Pluto. So, yeah, this is coming into Friday. Here's our full moon, and the conjunction with Mercury and the Sun, and that leads us to the weekend, the Saturday the 7th. Lilith, or the lunar apogee, has now moved into Leo, and the Sun, or the Moon, will be conjunct Procyon and move into Leo as well. And over the weekend, I think the opportunity to tap into our own passions, to feel a sense of wanting to express ourselves emotionally, is going to be really strong. So I look forward to that. I have no idea what to expect, but I think it's going to be good, honestly. So, my friends, let's see here. I would love to share some things with you, just so we are all caught up with each other. So, one of the things is that I am traveling starting on the 7th, and so the ministry is going to be out. I won't be doing the usual broadcast over the next, I'd say, 2 weeks. I certainly will be on social media. The Starseed Fellowship is still going to get all of their content that they are contributing to, and there may be some times where I pop on to talk about some things as they come up, but just so you know, not to expect any of the usual broadcast of the Starseed Ministry over the next 2 Mondays, okay? So the other thing I want to share with you is number one, the gift exchange is still open till the 6th, and you can go to my website, catalystenergies.net. Everything on the homepage is current in terms of offerings, so you can get all the information that you need. But this is a way to get a free micro reading or a free month of membership in order to try it out and see what it's all about. And you can do that by leaving a testimonial and submitting it on the webpage, or you are on the website, or a paid referral, right? That also can lead to, your offering into the gift exchange. So that's at my website, and you can check that out. And the other thing too is that I am still offering, I don't have a flyer for it. Let's see, I'll throw something else up there right now. Our Catalyst Classroom sessions, the Luna sessions, number 2, is up for Catalyst Classroom people. And we did talk about the 8 lunar phases, the Soli lunar cycle, and demonstration charts. The one thing I want to say is that I have a 33% promo going right now on all of my services, but it's only available to people if you're on your part of the membership, right? The Starseed Fellowship, or you're on my email list. And so you do that by going to my website and signing up on the homepage, and then you'll get the promo code for 33% off. This is only going to be available until the end of the week, till the 6th, right? Till Friday. So if that's something you're interested, I really encourage you to go sign up. You only get like 3 emails a month max, and they're really just giving you updates and tapping you into what is current in terms of what I'm offering, or if I'm doing special promotions that are only available to people on my list. It's a good reason to sign up, just so in case, social media or YouTube isn't an option anymore, at least we can have that connection. But 33% off some of the bigger high ticket items, that's a pretty good deal. And I want to make you aware of that still. So, like I said, go to the website and you can sign up. And I think that's all I have really to share with you guys right now. Things are going to slow down for me at the end of this week. So if you're interested in booking anything for mid to end January, you may want to do so and get your spot already saved, because it's starting to already book up anyway. So, my friends, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I am just so grateful to be on this journey with all of you. I appreciate you all so very much. Cancer people, your forecast for the full moon is going to be on its way today, today, I think so, as well as the Starseed Fellowship, plus your weekly astrology report will also be available. So you guys have a great week. I hope that you are doing really well, and I will see you for the Starseed Ministry in its full glory when I return from Portland. Until then, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other the best you can, and I'll see you on the flip side. Bye.